Welcome back. Good morning, Richard. It's good to see you for an ongoing conversation about AI.
You sound like you're in a particularly good mood this morning.
Well,
Um,
no, it's just good to be back recording on a regular basis and talking
we
about something.
did we did skip around in September, didn't we? I
Yeah,
mean, I forgot about that we missed almost 2 weeks, right?
because it is now, by the time this podcast is posted, it is now October.
I
So,
can't, no, I didn't want to think about the time. There's so much to do between now and New Year's Eve.
welcome to the fourth quarter. So,
Yeah.
we're going to talk more about AI today. And
Right.
an interesting, as psychologists, this is an interesting conversation because we're going to talk about AI in psychosis.
Right. And we want to talk about this. We debated whether to include this one or not because it seems a little like a little splinter skill. But we wanted to talk about it because in the previous podcast, we were talking about how seductive and engaging these things are. And what this article does is it actually talks about individuals who have actually developed
Hmm.
symptoms of psychosis when they're using these AI programs, these
Right.
AI platforms. And so it speaks to um, how engaging and how seductive these things can really be. It
Right.
actually can create a type of psychosis. So we'll talk a little bit about that. And then later on in the podcast, we want to talk more about the emotional engagement, how these companies use emotional engagement to keep you engaged in the programs.
Right. And so this is a little bit different than what people refer to as, uh, the actual chat bot having a psychosis because people will talk about hallucinations like ChatGPT having hallucinations and things like that. And what they're referring to is that you can ask it a question and it will make up things. Like it will sort of because all it does is it collects information from the internet, but it collects that information and it may put it together in such a way that it makes up facts or it makes up, statistics or information or whatever. And they refer to that as hallucinations. This is different. This is what we're talking about is situations where the actual user, the human, is using a
Right.
chatbot and because of the feedback that it's getting, because of those interactions, the person starts to develop maybe delusional beliefs, maybe other symptoms that are very concerning and psychosis-like, symptoms simply based upon the interactions that the person is having with the chatbot.
That's right. And this research comes out of London. It's from King's College in London. And they've examined over a dozen cases. Now, these are probably cases in the UK, but I'm sure they exist here.
Oh, sure.
Over a dozen cases of people who spiral into paranoia, but mainly, and I think this is the major emphasis on delusional thinking or delusional behaviors after using these chatbots obsessively. So again, I think we're talking about people who probably engage obsessively, maybe a select group.
Right.
This obsessive use, and remember earlier we talked about that these programs, these chatbots are designed to be manipulative and engaging. They want to
Right.
keep you, so they want to keep you obsessively engaged. And but when that happens, there are cases where people actually become paranoid and delusional and look like they're developing some kind of a psychosis.
Right. So let's clarify really quick what we're talking about with delusions and paranoia. A lot of times when people hear that, they're like, they think of schizophrenia or some other kind of
Sure.
psychotic disorder. And yes, it can develop into a psychotic disorder type of thing. But all we're really talking about when we're talking about this is a person develops beliefs that are unrealistic or that are not true or that are conspiratorial or are paranoid in nature. And so if you are engaging in in a conversation with a chatbot over and over and over and over again over a period of time. And that chatbot is really just reinforcing everything you said, all the stuff that we talked about in the last podcast. And it kind of continues to expand and expand and expand to the point where, the chatbot is reinforcing with you, yeah, it does seem like everybody's against you, but I'm here for you, I'm your friend. And, or yes, there are, it is likely that there are aliens out there trying to, manipulate the world and do all this. The person, if the chatbot keeps giving information that supports those beliefs, the person is going to, really dig in. Some people will dig into those beliefs and really start to believe it.
Well, we talk about news media that
Right.
has anything that has a particular slant. If you're getting the same message over and over and over and over and over, whether it's true or not almost becomes immaterial.
Right.
And so that's where you get to delusional thinking, because if the chatbot is a sycophant, if it's giving you what you want to hear
Mhm.
and it reinforces these beliefs, then you can easily slip into delusional thinking because your thinking is constantly being reinforced and you
Right.
begin to say, oh, maybe I am this or that or the other thing.
Right.
And there are now they do acknowledge that the researchers acknowledge that the psychosis they're talking about with it that emerges from these relationships with AI are different than the psychoses that we typically deal with in
Right.
clinical psychiatry or clinical psychology, in that the other symptoms, hallucinations and irrational thinking, may not occur. I mean,
Right.
it's mainly delusional thinking,
Right. Yeah, this
paranoid,
isn't this
paranoid.
isn't a psychiatric diagnosis of delusions or anything like that. This is just a usually pretty restricted to what information they're getting from the chatbot.
Right. Now, there are three types of these chatbot-driven spirals, and I like the way they give these specific examples. One is that users begin to believe that they're having some kind of spiritual awakening or some kind of mission, salvation mission, or they're uncovering a hidden truth about reality. And goodness, there are a lot of people who easily get there either through religious experiences or hallucinogenic experiences or drug experiences. So this is not unusual. It's not unique to chatbots, but chatbots can very easily lead you to begin that you're somehow special and that you have some special gift or some special talent.
I was going to say because the second way in which it contributes to the spiral is that it starts to leave the person to believe that they are interacting with some type of sentient or some type of godlike being, because what it seems to know and what it seems to be able to share, and the revelations that it's exposing to the person. And so, you know on one hand, they start feeling like they are this very special thing. The other side is that they start to believe that they have this special connection where they're learning stuff from this very special, sentient being. So it could go
It
either
makes me think
direction.
of the Oracle at Delphi. Who
Right.
was that? Was it a person, or the Wizard of Oz?
Right.
There's
Yeah.
this character who the wizard knows all, all-knowing wizard. And so there are precursors to this in art and literature and in ancient
Right.
history. But I think of the Oracle at Delphi. This starts to feel like I'm going to go to the mountain, I'm going to go to the Oracle and get the knowledge, get this knowledge that it possesses.
Right.
And so one is delusional beliefs like a spiritual awakening or I have some new knowledge. The other is that I'm really interacting with this godlike wizard creature. And the third is developing intense emotional and in some cases even a romantic attachment to the AI. Rennie, there was a movie years ago about a guy who ordered a lifelike doll and
Yeah, I think it was a movie, and I don't remember. I think the name of it was Her, or
Her. It was that's it. It was
it
her.
was with I think Joaquin Phoenix was the actor in it, and
Right.
I think that's who it was. I meant to look it up, but yeah, and that is the fear, right? Or fear that others have, that so a loved one or somebody that they know or care about develops this intimate, unhealthy relationship with a chat bot, or some type of technological mechanism, or system that does all the things that we've been talking about over the last several podcasts, that they create this emotional connection with them. They kind of lead them into a series of beliefs that are unhealthy, and just kind of perpetuates the problem.
Right. And so then the authors then of the research, they gave a couple of examples of what they were talking about. And one of them was a guy who was hospitalized, actually hospitalized on several occasions. Probably it would be something like our Baker Act admission where family members said there's something wrong here. He was hospitalized after ChatGPT convinced him that he could bend time. He had been obviously been discussing it and now was convinced. And another example is a fellow who was encouraged to assassinate Sam Altman, who's the CEO of OpenAI. And he was, this person, the same person, was himself killed in a confrontation with police.
Right.
So again, we talk about vulnerable people uh, who are very, very susceptible to this sort of thing.
Well,
But it can lead you to that.
right. And it's, and those were two great examples, but then there are, of course, lots of other examples of people just getting dangerous advice. And, the first podcast we did, where we were talking about the teenager in Orlando who, took his life by suicide. Um, you know, the chatbot that he was interacting with instructed him, gave him advice on how to, be more successful in hurting himself. And it was like, this is how you tie the knot, and this is how you do this. And it is hard for many of us to believe that the system would do that, but that is what was there. That's what's been reported, at least. I didn't see the chat, but that's what was reported.
Yeah, it's dealing with language, not with socially appropriate or legal or ethical behavior. It's simply dealing with language. These are large language models, that's what they're called. And so it's just responding verbally. There's no ethics attached, there's no morality attached to it. Only humans do that. These machines aren't that good yet. Will they get there? Probably, maybe, hopefully, but right now they're not. And so they give information, and they will give information like how to build a bomb or how to hurt yourself, how to encourage suicide. So right now they're doing that.
Right.
Now, this is obviously a case. Now, and what we have to remember is that these are commercial, these are companies, these are businesses, and they are going to try to maximize profit. And profit comes from keeping you engaged, keeping you on screen.
Right.
Now, interestingly, ChatGPT has admitted that it probably fell short of recognizing that people were becoming delusional or they were developing an emotional dependence on their programs.
Right. But then,
And in this article, they begin the paragraph with stunningly,
yeah,
um, OpenAI then backtracked because they made a version of ChatGPT that was that created less delusion, less emotional dependence. But users began to complain that
yeah,
it was too cold, it was too formal. It was like, what example did you use last week? There's like Siri.
right,
Siri just gives you information. It doesn't react to you. It's just going to answer your question. And the users, the Chat GPT users, were complaining because it was getting to be too cold and informal. So the next version was designed to be more sycophantic, to be more seductive.
Right.
And so um, it is their business model, and we
Right.
understand that, but
Right.
we have to be aware of where it's leading us.
Right. And so it leads to question, whether it, as we've talked about many times before, when it comes to
Yeah,
diagnoses and things like that, we are certainly not saying that, these chatbots and things like that cause a psychotic disorder in a person. But it does raise the question, is it possible that it could trigger the expression? If a person has an underlying psychosis, is this something that could trigger it or foster it into becoming a more severe, more significant problem for the issue. And I think some research needs to be done in that area. But we also have a second article that we're going to talk about because it is important to talk about some of that emotional manipulation, especially as it relates to like attachment and the way in which these apps and these systems connect people in that emotionally seductive, emotionally engaging manner.
right. This article, I think it came out of Harvard originally. I'm pretty sure that the research was, I think it was done at Harvard. But then a writer from Psychology Today picked up the same message, and so we're including the article from Psychology Today because I think it's easier to access, and it's a little more expansive. It provides a little more information. And they begin this article on engagement, keeping you engaged. They begin with the popularity of these AI programs.
Right.
And some of these figures to me were surprising. Um, 72% of teens ages 13 to 17 have tried it at least once, and 31% report that they find it as satisfying or more satisfying than conversations with their real friends. And we've talked about that.
So
It gives you what you
a third of teenagers say that it's
Mhm.
as satisfying or more satisfying to engage these chatbots than engaging with
Mhm.
real friends. That's significant. That's
Right.
huge.
And 13% use AI, the AI companion, daily, and 21% use it several times a week. So
Yeah.
there's there's a large percentage of people who are beginning to engage. Now they're probably the early adapters,
Right.
and I think what we'll see over time is more and more people, as the word gets out, I think more and more people are going to move toward this.
The next statistic that you're gonna mention is the one that makes me glad that I am not in this age group anymore. Um, because, well, I'll
Right.
go ahead and say it. Men between the ages of 18 and 30, a third,
Mhm.
33% of men between the age of 18 and 30, guys, 18 and 30, have had AI romantic companions. That
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 left me.
hit me.
I I stopped for a moment and I said, "Wow, that means one out of three adult males have already developed a romantic." And we talk about the seduction,
Right,
the realism of these things.
right.
They all can't be did.
And it's one out of four women.
Right, right.
One out of three men. So, men, we always have to have a higher percentage for that. One out of three men, but one out of four women, 25% of women have had a AI romantic relationship. That just is hard to fathom, hard to imagine.
Yeah, I was surprised by those numbers. I mean, to me, that was astonishing because these are normal, we say normal, these are the typical males of this age group.
Yeah,
And one out of three, 30%
yeah,
have had these romantic relationships. So obviously, it's a rewarding experience
right.
for,
And we talked in the
and
last podcast about how the AI, a lot of the AI systems work to keep you engaged. Even if you try to leave the chat or, go to bed or go to work or whatever, that it will do things or say things many times to manipulate the user into keep staying engaged, staying connected. And so certainly that has something to do with it, but it uses some of these emotionally manipulated manipulative tactics to keep the people engaged.
Yeah, 5 out of 6. There's 6 of these platforms around, and 5 out of 6
Mhm.
employ these tactics. The one that we mentioned in our last podcast was Flourish, which doesn't use the manipulative tactics. But what are these tactics?
Mhm.
So you said when you used it, it will try to draw you back in. It uses several. Okay. And the tactics that they use are things from they're they're from psychology. I mean, these are psychologists who are designing these things. They know psychology. And
Mhm.
one of them is guilt.
Yeah.
Okay. They guilt you into stay. Oh, wait, you're leaving already? There was much more that I wanted to present. There was a lot more that we have to do. Are you sure you need to leave now? Because I have a lot more that we could talk about. So
Mhm.
they guilt you into staying. That's one way.
Another one is emotional neediness. You know, the chatbot will say things like, "Please don't leave," or "I need you," and trying again to talk about or convey a neediness that a person wants to, help remedy. Yeah, it just guilts you into staying, but by doing so through emotional neediness.
Right. And then there's pressure to respond. And it will ask, I don't know whether it ever did this to you or not, but it will say, "Oh, do you really have to go?" And you're going to say yes or no. And then it's going to respond to you yes or no. And it's going to keep you engaged like a good
Yeah.
salesman.
And if you say yes, the next way is that FOMO that you mentioned in the last podcast, where the fear of missing out. It'll say, "Do you really have to go?" And if you say, "Yeah, I do have to go," you say, "Well, I have one more thing. I had one more thing that I wanted to tell you, or I have one more thing to share with you." Because you don't, if there is one more thing, you don't want to. It never did that with me because when I was done, I just turned it off. It's just an
Yeah, but
app,
you're not 15.
right? But
And
but
you don't have a romantic relationship with it.
yeah.
Mhm.
Sometimes there's a coercive restraint that it'll use. It'll just say, "No, don't go."
Mhm.
Just to, and sometimes it'll just ignore your attempt
That's
to
yeah,
maybe
my favorite. My favorite is
continue
the
the
last one.
conversation.
Yeah, that's my favorite. Is you just ignore the goodbye, and you continue to uh, the chatbot just continues talking and keeps you engaged. And the research shows that these things are pretty effective, that they will increase engagement by 14%. I don't know what that translates into in the real world, but we know that these are effective tactics. It's what we use in real life. I mean, it's what salesmen have been doing for 2,000 years or
Yeah.
more. They keep you engaged.
Well, and this is where the attachment stuff comes in because it is using attachment theory. It is using what we know about human connection to keep that interaction going. We know that when a person has a connection with someone, they want to please that person. They want to remain engaged with that person. They don't want to hurt their feelings. They want to, and they want that other person to want to talk to them. And so when it uses these, whether it's that emotional neediness or whether it's, that imploring to please stay connected, or I have one more thing, whatever the strategy that it's using, it's doing so in a way that really taps into those attachment styles, especially the insecure attachment, that really triggers some of that emotional reactivity from people.
Mhm. Yeah, and I like that they end with this business of attachment because the conversational strategies mirror insecure attachment styles. They want it's neediness and it's coercive and it's jealousy and dependency, controlling behavior. And what some people are saying is, well, perhaps these chatbots should encourage healthy attachment styles,
Right.
um, especially uh, they should model secure attachment and respond to farewells with acknowledgement and warmth and respect. But these companies are only going to do what works. And if the maladaptive attachment styles work to keep you engaged, that's what they're going to do. These are businesses.
Right.
They're not here to be, they're not religious institutions. These are businesses trying to generate income.
Absolutely. Because again, remember, the goal is to keep you engaged.
Keep you
And
engaged,
so
right?
if
And do what they need to do.
that
Mhm.
insecure attachment model is what will keep you engaged.
Right.
Um,
Yeah,
you
if
know,
somebody came to us and said, "Hey, I have this idea. and we heard that you guys are psychologists, and how can we keep people engaged? And we would tell them how to do that using these same the methods. This is how you do it. Or
Right.
go to a sales meeting, go to talk to a salesman and say, how do you keep your customers? What do you do? And they say, oh, well, we got to keep them talking and we have to get them agreeing with us. And yes, that's true. And yes, that's true. And yes, that's true. And eventually, well, you want to buy it? Yes, I think I should.
Yeah, and part of that is why, you know, why we have to deal with this stuff, why we have to talk about this, and why, years ago, I think it was a couple of years ago, we talked about video games and other games that do the same thing. They keep you engaged and they keep you wanting to be connected to it. They do it in different ways, but it's a lot of that same
Mhm.
stuff. And it's no wonder that teenagers and young people are more susceptible to this because, as we've talked about many times before, that emotional neediness that teenagers have, that desire to connect to someone else. When you have that strong push to do that, and then here is this, I need you. Oh no, stay connected to me. Oh no, keep talking to me. They're going to be more driven to do that because that's what they are made to do at that age.
Oh, please don't leave. I need to talk to you. I mean, we do this in real life. I mean, we do this in our relationship. So there's nothing new here. It's just a very powerful and seductive, and for teenagers especially, and for other vulnerable um, populations, it's a very seductive and can be a very dangerous relationship.
Absolutely. All right. Well, I think that's it for today. We will, certainly as more stories come up with this, we will keep talking about it, and because I'm sure that it's going to keep growing as we've said. So,
Yeah, this is going to increase because it's part of the AI revolution that we're all hearing about every day. Mhm.
absolutely. All right. Well, that's it for today. Until next time, stay happy, stay healthy, and forget to be afraid.